By using Y chromosome genetic tests, we can trace our lineages back to only a few people that survived the cataclysmic event and repopulated the world. Hi, I'm Martin Dorfling from Cataclysmic Science. In this video, I'm going to look at this book called Traced by Dr. Nathaniel Jensen, and all the genetic slides that I will show in this video is from this book or from the videos that the author made of the content of this book. Here you can see two figures. The one on the left shows the generations after Noah's flood with his 3 sons and then their sons and the nations into which the people divided at the Tower of Babel. Now the second figure shows genetic groups based on the Y chromosome lineages, and that's those numbers at R1A, R1B, and Q, and N, S, K, M, O, T, L, I, J, H, C. All those letters there are Y chromosome groups, and it shows the lineage of the groups that are family related and how far back they stretch and mixed or like split up into different nations or groups or civilizations. So we can trace this back. All this data is explained in the book and in the videos, so I really suggest you go watch out all the videos from the author of this book. The book is called Traced. Okay, so let me give a quick run through of some of the contents in the videos that covers this book by the author of the book. I just, as I said, I copied the slides from his videos. So the slides ain't mine, it belongs to the author. I just borrowed them to show you guys in this video. Here we just see a subsection where we zoomed into one of these lineages, giving a better idea for you guys to see the different nations or groups of people based on these Y chromosomes and how they come from different families, and you can see their ancestry line. So the Y chromosome follows the paternal line, so it's only the fathers, your father, your grandfather, that are traced in this line, not the mother side of the family. So the first haplogroup I'm going to jump into is haplogroup Q, and as you can see here, it's slightly traced from the Asian continent into the Americas. Now, the Americas have a very, as it said, a deep and complex history. There were multiple settling events of North America. In this section, you'll see the author of the book show that he incorporated some other factors that help with the genetics. So here, he used language differences from census data about where does the people live and what language should they speak, and he actually correlated the language you can see up there in Canada and then down there in the United States, people with different languages, different tribes, and then compared that data with the haplogroup, that's the genetic groups, the Y chromosomes, with the haplogroup C and Q, and try to see if there's a correlation between the language groups and the chromosome tests. And as you can see, the data correlated quite well with the different haplogroups and the native languages. Now here we see a couple of groups in, again, Asia and into Europe. We see the haplogroup J2L, I down there, R1A there, and in this one we see some of the subgroups, so these can also be traced into further subgroups. Here we see the Indo-European language map along with the Indo-European genetic tests, the I to J, and there's good correlation there. What was originally tested here was the current day Egyptian genetics and looking at where different parts of the people that are there today, where that genetics came from or went to. And here you can see it's from completely different family lines which were only connected way back in history. Again, comparing those groups now with the languages, you can see that in North Africa is the haplogroup E1 E1b1b and the haplogroup E1b1a, which is more in Western and Central Africa. One of the interesting videos that Nathaniel made was the hidden history of the Pacific Islanders. And here he looked at the KMS and also the haplogroup C and the sublineages. This is there at the Polynesia, Melanesia, Micronesia, and these lineages could be traced very well among the people on those Pacific islands. A couple of interesting things revealed by this genetic studies were the visual characteristics of different peoples and tribes and their heritage. Now, one would think, for example, in this figure in the top left corner, the 4 people there are from the same lineage, and the 4 people next to them are from a different lineage. Like the first 4, you'd think it's all from the Pacific Island and Asia, Southeast Asia and the Pacific, and then the people just to the right of them, those 4 are all people from Africa. But actually, if you look at the genetics and then at the figure at the bottom, it actually shows that it's mixed a bit. Like some people that you'd expect look like they are more African actually fit into the group that's haplogroup C. And then also some of the people that you'd expect in the Pacific and South Asia they look a bit more African also, although the lineages go way back. So obviously back just after Noah's flood, everybody were connected, but shortly after the Tower of Babel event, people split up completely, and some of these tribes probably had no contact again, but the genetics still remained, and those features, skin color, hair characteristics, facial features, that still came through in different visual ways in different lineages. So this was quite an interesting discovery. Now, for instance, here the haplogroup D shows totally different skin color, visual and facial characteristics. One of the interesting groups here are the Great Andamanese, which I'll get back to now. I first want to jump to haplogroup A for a moment. Now, haplogroup A shows here specifically the Bushman. Now, haplogroup A here, what I want to refer to is the Bushman, or actually as we know them, the Khoisan. Bushman is just a collective term, which is way down in southern Africa. And another thing, previously it was shown that the genetics was traced and also compared to language structures. I was just thinking, what if we look at ancient weapons? Now, specifically here in Africa with the haplogroup A, what I've seen is the people that use bows and arrows for hunting are the San, which is the Bushman, the Karo archers in Ethiopia, the Masai in Kenya, and the Hazda in Tanzania, which coincidentally correlate to haplogroup A. And this is very distinct from the rest of the Bantus that we saw in West and Central Africa. Now, I know later it said that the Congo army also had archers, but that's only in the 18th century during David Livingstone's time that he recorded that. And then also the Nubian archers in South Sudan and that went into Egypt, but again, different situations there. I just wonder if some families were related and they had the same type of weapons, and as they split up, they kept on making the same weapons, whereas the the Bantus, like the black people of Western and Central Africa, does not have bows and arrows, but has different weapons, which is interesting because it seems to be some other places there are also people that doesn't have bows and arrows, but also more hand weapons, like I think the Aborigines in Australia and the Maoris in New Zealand. Now there's also so back to Group D, what I mentioned earlier. So this picture is, I think, the first one that's not from Nathaniel's slides from Traced. This is from just a YouTube channel I found. It's let me tell you now. Shiva Tells. I met a real Andamanese tribe. I just took this picture to show how they look at, and this are the people. It's a different genetic group. It's haplogroup D, but they are from an island east of India. And I just thought they closer to the equator, darker skin, but the weapons are still a lot like as we saw in the previous group, the Khoisan and the Maasai and this other archers group. And then there's another group, this pictures is also from National Geographic, which is in the Brazilian rainforest, that these pictures were taken from, of a tribe living there. And it just feels like they all have the same weapons that I trace here, not necessarily the same facial features. Oh, totally different. But what is interesting, which I'll get to later but the Bushmen, the Khoisan, they do look a lot like the Olmec stones, which is a Polynesian. But okay, I'll get to that later. Now, so here's a map of what we call, so the blue dots, ignore the little red dot there. The blue circles there are what we call the cradle of civilization. And this is where different civilizations really spread from a certain recorded time. So you can see down there the Egyptian, Sumerian, there were Greece, Mycenae, those places, and then the Indo culture, and then the Yellow River there where the Chinese were from, and then very small there in Mexico is a Mesoamerica. Now remember this archaeological paradigm tool that I made in a previous series, which I used for data analysis and presupposition in archaeological research of ancient civilizations. Again, looking at all this data, we must look at our presuppositions and our worldview for when we interpret our data about ancient civilizations. And okay, so this is just zooming into the right top corner one. This is the Genesis worldview of advanced civilization before a big cataclysmic event, which we call the flood, and then a civilization just after that, still highly intelligent, and then many civilizations after that's represented by the orange line. So the orange lines are the civilizations, and after the Tower of Babel, they split into many lines. Blue line is just the population growth, and the ziggity-zaggity line, that's the cataclysmic event. That's based on the hydroplate theory, which is another video that you must watch. So in this, I'm trying here to build a model or a concept of what drove the ancient world, what drives ancient civilization, what was the moving force, the powers, the environmental influences, individual events. So I'm using these three concepts here. The first one is, I'm calling it the Scythian Tartaria wheel. It doesn't have a fixed name, but from that region in Asia, it's this period of, I don't know, 2000 BC to 1500 AD, is this region of 3,500 years of history where there weren't any official big civilization. I mean, there were many, but it's not like the ones in the blue circles that's really famous. So this is where the Scythians were there for a while, and then the Huns were there, and the Mongolians, and so many other things, but it's never fixed. Like, for a very long time, we have that map of the Tartaria kingdom, which there were invasions, I think, almost into Poland, and it's a very wide region, and not a lot of recorded history there. Even the Chinese had built a wall there between them, whether to keep people in or out. I'm not sure, but so this is the one driving force where new nations would all the time just roll out, right? It's like rolling out people, pumping out people into civilization. As you can see, like Haplo Group Q is pushing people. There were multiple migration events into the Americas. This is now specifically this picture in the 300 to 600 AD, but there were multiple events. The Indo-European languages, there were forces driving them into India, into Arabia, into Western Europe. There's, like I said, we've got actually history recorded here that we can compare with historical events, with languages, with these genetic traced elements. And I just feel that that's a very specific region that we must look into. There's this wheel that driving, that roll people, that forces mass migrations into the Americas, throughout Asia, into Western Europe, into the Mediterranean, that influences into Northern Africa. The after effects of those migrations, and like I said, for a period of 3,000 years. Now, the second group, this is there's some environmental factors here. So this is more related to the Pacific Ocean and Southeast Asia, the Polynesian people, and I showed a picture there of my hydroplate video where I cover Dr. Walt Brown's hydroplate theory, which is something you must really please watch those videos of Walt Brown. I will also add a link somewhere below, because you need to understand the geological model that actually drive this, and the after events. The after events of the hydroplate theory runs for more than 1,000 years. Like, actually, today our environment still have after effects, trying to establish a equilibrium back to normal, or not that it's really a normal, but understanding the world, the environmental influences, where things are moving to. Now, the after effect of the hydroplate theory, which was a cataclysmic event, a flood event, and in the years following that, there were heavy weather changes and water level rises, small events. We had a big cataclysmic event, and then all these multiple floods afterwards. And that's a driving force here with the in the Pacific. So we've got people moving down, the kangaroos hop fast into Australia before the water level rise. The people also move into this Pacific islands, and as they move about, the water rises, maybe trapping them on those islands, and they might use small boats or canoes to keep on moving. And that's why you'll also see I've added the Kontiki there, which is a very interesting theory of actually going from the other side, from the Americas. It's worth watching. There's a book about it, or there's some good videos on YouTube and documentaries that you can watch about the Kontiki tour. Now, it only takes one boat to have actually done it and to make it to one island for the Kontiki tour to hold true. So it's an interesting theory, and it might have happened. Haplogroup C and Q, they are in the Americas. Haplogroup Q seems to be the main one, but haplogroup C is also there, and then the yellow ones, the sublineages of haplogroup C, is the children of them. And this is why I did mention the Kontiki tour. Like, there could be people in South America or Mesoamerica that did get on a boat and from there went west from there. So that is a possibility. That's why I don't throw away the Kontiki theory. But the main thing is, after the hydroplate event, water level rose. I think the main migration is from South Asia through those islands, Philippines, Fiji, into the rest. So remember, I also mentioned earlier about haplogroup A, the Bushmen. Like, I've met some Amazonian people, and they really look a lot like the Bushmen in Africa, which is two worlds apart, different genetic groups, haplogroup C, haplogroup A. But haplogroup A, as I said, those Bushmen actually looks a lot like the Olmec structure, like the Olmec faces. But okay, they are the Polynesians there. I think they are from the Olmec civilization. So yes, the mechanisms, water level rise, we know that from the cataclysmic event. The hydroplate theory explained that well. It doesn't really go into hundreds of years after the flood, but that's a after effect. There's many other theories that built on that. Even some rapid ice deposition and ice melting events a couple of hundred years after Noah's flood. Now, if you look at the third event or thing that I just want to mention here, it's not a specific event, but just something of interest. So I call this part the missing civilizations, or other names, the lost Silk Route ship. That's for the one in Africa, or the never settled civilizations. Actually, let me just make myself a bit smaller there. Just want to get out of the way. Now you can see the Olmec structure. Before I continue, I just want to remind you to watch some of my other videos that will give also some background to where some of these things come from. Like the Golden Unicorn of Africa, hydroplate theory, that's very important to watch. There's some, the Stonehenge one, and part of the Atlantis one, and timelines, that's important. Now that Mapungubwe site that I showed, that's in southern Africa. It's a missing civilization. Now, we're not really sure exactly what it is. It seemed to be something small, but completely disappeared. So the interesting thing about Mapungubwe is there were possibly some Egyptian, Indian, and Chinese artifacts. And I mean, we've got reports of Phoenician ships going around Africa that Herodotus mentions. We also know about King David's ships that went on 3-year voyages. There's rumors of King Solomon's mines. Now, in later years, more modern days, we've got a Malagasy people from Madagascar who are of Polynesian descent, which is there on the east coast of Africa. There's things like the Dravidian culture, some similarities that's been made by people. The Kumasi Indian traders might have played a big role. In South Africa might recognize the name Kumati Poort, referring to the Kumasi people, Indian traders, possibly. And it's believed that the Bushmen, or like today called the Khoisan, had interaction with these peoples. I actually found that during the making of this video, I searched for some answers on the internet and tried to see if other people also came up with the same ideas. And I found one historian, Dr. Romnik, that have this Indo-African theory about this Indian Dravidian culture civilization quickly in southern Africa, which is a theory. But the time in which these things could play off is so big. Like I said, we've got King Solomon's Mines, which is 1,000 years BC, to the later years maritime Silk routes, which is, Chinese records indicate, I think, even before Christ, twice there were events of Roman soldiers recorded that made it into China, but it weren't a big event, and probably they never made it back home because it weren't recorded on the Roman side that these guys went to China. But Roman emperors were famous for wearing silk clothes, which came from the Silk routes, which is long, like 100 years before Christ, that era. Do we know that Mapungubwe was a lost civilization or a trading route? I don't know. It might have been just one ship that got lost with some artifacts on, made their way down to southern Africa, ended up there, went up along the river, lived there for a while, built a civilization, and died off, and never really had connection with the rest of the world again trading. So it might not have been a trading station, might have been a lost ship making it there and survivors, and they never made it back to civilization. Let's jump to the other missing civilization, which is the Olmecs in Mesoamerica. Now, as we've mentioned earlier, there were multiple settling events into the Americas, and we also see different genetic groups in there. And so, still from the videos by Dr. Nathaniel from Traced, this again from his slides. The genetics of the Americans, the Olmecs haplogroup, it's still unknown, and also the group that came after them, the Mayans, still unknown. They need more people to do these genetic tests so they can get information. The Olmecs date, there's a date of 1,500 BC, and the Mayans later 400 BC. But even that 1,500 BC date, I'm not sure how they get those dates. If it's through carbon dating, then I don't put really any reliance on carbon dates. I think there were a stone ring date that measure, or that was written to be 3 BC, which is again not that long ago. It's a big difference from 1,500 BC to just 3 BC. So we really don't know how old the Olmec civilization was, since there's no, we don't know who it was. The people, we know about the Mayans that came after them, and then who knows? Maybe the Olmecs jump on the boats and they went to East Ross Islands and continued making giant statues there. I don't know. I don't think it's likely. There's language differences and things you can trace. But yeah, interesting ideas. Now, looking at the two groups, the Olmecs and Mapungubwe, the missing civilizations, why are they missing? And something that I thought about, I mean, this might be completely different eras. Mapungubwe might be from just 1,000 years after Christ, and the Olmecs might be just before Christ, or maybe 1,000 years even before Christ, who knows. But both are missing, right? And something I do notice is both are in funnel zones, or areas where bigger groups later had to migrate through. So they might have been the first groups, especially with the Olmecs, settled there, and then as more groups come and move through that area, they destroy them, or they force them to move on to another place. That might be a driving force. Same with Mapungubwe. I know it looks like Africa is wide down there, but to the west of that is desert, and people follow fresh water streams. So they had to move, when they moved down from Central Africa, move down into Southern Africa. That's where groups would migrate through. And that might have destroyed the Mapungubwe kingdom, or maybe they just all died from malaria, or like I say, maybe they were never a kingdom and just a lost Phoenician ship, or a Silk Route trading ship. So yes, looking at this map is, number one, in Tartaria, the driving force, just pumping people out in every direction. In the Pacific Ocean, water level rise that influence and trap people on islands. Number three is just sometimes civilizations went missing and we've only find traces of them. That's a thing that happened. I think we need to look at a bigger picture, longer history around them to maybe analyze and think what might have happened to them. Now remember my data analysis graph, the archaeological tool there. Along with it, you'll see the map. That's a very traditional map of the upper left idea, the Darwinian evolution group, where they have a map of, let's say, the traditional idea of archaeology of 200,000 years ago. People came out of Africa and moved up into the rest of the world. I really disagree with that map and with that concept. I think a lot of things shows us the movement of the world were totally different. This is why it's important to look at different other worldviews and take your data and analyze it through different worldviews. You might come to totally different conclusions if you just try looking at your data at another angle, and sometimes it makes more sense if you look via another worldview. Thanks for watching, and I will do some more follow-up videos on this.